Emmy nominee Gloria Reuben played Elliot's therapist Krista on Mr. Robot, which has now concluded its run on the USA Network after 4 seasons. I'm Kevin Jacobsen of Gold Derby, here with Gloria. And to start, I would love to just know, in your own words, looking back on 4 seasons, how would you describe this fascinating relationship between Krista and Elliot?
That's a good word, fascinating, because it's definitely, I would think, the most unique relationship I've ever seen on screen, or I've ever even heard about, from friends or what have you, between a patient and his therapist. Clearly there were some boundaries that were crossed, and there was a lot at play from day one. But I can't even believe that the show is over. I mean, obviously, I know that it is. I'm not living in denial. I think these past few months have definitely slapped any kind of denial out of my system, a number of different things. But those 4 seasons really were exquisite. And I think about Sam and Rami and Christian. I think about everybody a lot. And I will hold those memories dear for sure, because creatively it was challenging and fulfilling. And personally, it was just so, there were so many. I got Elliot, and obviously 99% of the fans, or if not 100% of the fans of the show, got him as well. We all sometimes tackle issues with loneliness and isolation, and there was a lot of bravery in this show, a lot of places that everybody dived into deeply, and that doesn't happen all the time. So yeah, it was great.
Yeah. Well, you had a pretty big season this final season, I have to say, especially around the midpoint of the season. Krista is kidnapped and interrogated by Vera, and I think you are really able to convey a level of fear that is so palpable. When you knew you were going to have to go to that place in multiple episodes, actually, what was running through your mind?
It really, it was a tricky time. That was the trickiest thing I've ever done on screen. And perhaps in my life, because, technically and physically, as we were filming those scenes in Krista's apartment, the film was extraordinary. I was literally bound and gagged for the most part of about 4 days. So that's never happened to me before in my life. And, it's if I may, it's scientifically proven, but you don't even have to be a scientist. The body doesn't know that you're acting. The body responds emotionally and chemically, right? So to be bound and gagged, and yes, of course, it was a safe, obviously, it was a safe environment, and if I needed to, if I did not feel like, if I just needed to kind of break out of it for a few minutes, we decided that, I would stomp my feet, and that would be like the signal to, I just break. But frankly, I didn't want to take a break. I don't know. I like to torture myself, I guess. But I felt like it felt extraordinarily. I was, my body was scared. Again, obviously my mind knew that I was safe, but it was really a challenging thing, emotionally at the end of the day, and physically as well. Now, also, I have to say that the set was extremely, as was always the case on Mr. Robot, was extremely respectful, and there was a real kind of, you could feel it in the air, there was a real cohesiveness and a real respect for what we were doing, how we were filming, what the story was, and what all of us actors were going through. Everybody was going through their own emotional trauma, if you will. I'm not speaking for everybody, but their characters, etc. It was extremely intense. So I was surrounded by this respectful, cocoon, if you will, for the craft of acting. So I was able to stay in a place mentally and emotionally I don't know how I did it. I really don't know how I did it. At one point, I joked with Sam. I said, Sam, I took him very seriously, kind of thing. I said, Sam, I just have to ask you, the intention here, like, you don't want me to have a nervous breakdown, right? That's not what you're intending.
Oh.
There's some moments where it's feeling a little shaky. But
Wow.
yeah, I know. Wow. And yeah, and the episodes, those episodes are just. I mean, when I watched it for the first time.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. Yeah, I could just as a viewer, I was. It was so heavy, you know. Well, you work pretty closely with Elliot Villar in those episodes, who plays Vera, and you're both going to a really intense place together.
Yeah.
What was that dynamic like on set between the two of you?
Yeah, it was again very respectful and very and Elliot is the nicest guy. He's so nice. He's a family man. He has 2 young children who he adores. He would talk about his kids all the time in the makeup room and what they were doing and da-da-da. And, the sweetest guy. And then, which was really kind of at a certain point, I remember a couple of times in the makeup room, I'd have to put in my AirPods and just listen to some, I always create a playlist for the roles that I play. And sometimes specifically for a certain day or a certain scene that we're filming, right? So I would have to kind of listen to the music that I had put together for that scene for those many days because he was such a nice guy and I couldn't, you know what I mean? I really had to stay focused. But when we were filming those scenes, I'm telling you, terrified me. He terrified me. He went to this place. He was not afraid. He was not afraid of not being Mr. Nice Guy. I mean, yeah. And that jumpsuit, and the hair, and the whole thing, man. And Todd Kemp, the lighting, and again the vibe in the room was quiet. It's quiet. It's quiet.
Yeah, and I feel like you're still feeling the effects of it here too.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to get into some spoiler territory for those of you who haven't watched it, season 4 yet. Go watch it. Yeah. Come back and watch the rest of this interview later. But there is this scene in episode 7, which, by the way, a brilliant episode. It was almost like watching a play. There is that climactic moment where Krista is guiding Elliot to remember what happened with his father as a child. And it seemed like a really difficult scene to pull off and give the amount of sensitivity and weight that I think it deserves. Can you talk about filming that scene in particular?
It was the most delicate thing. Rami, at that point in that part of the storytelling, obviously Vera is in the room, but it's really just Krista and I. It's really just the 2 of us. And Krista knows. And she knows that it might destroy him, might crush him, but it also might set him free. I don't mean that, I know it sounds so cliche, the truth will set you, but it really might finally heal this young man. And Rami is, as we all know, he's so extremely open and sensitive, and it was unlike anything I've ever done. And technically, we filmed it. Sam doesn't mind me saying this, but yes, it was. We filmed it like a play, and it's like 5 acts, but there were cameras everywhere. The beauty of the stage that was set up, Christy's apartment, her office, and then her living dining room. was that with the bookcase or with the wall that had the fireplace, the wall that held the fireplace, portions of those pieces of set could be removed so that they could have a camera and a camera here, camera. Okay? So there were multiple cameras filming at the same time. It was genius. Well, the whole thing is always genius. Mr. Robot has been genius from day one. But how this was conceived, obviously how it was written and directed, but how the whole set was conceived and how it was filmed was, I don't know what I'm going to have to do because I can't, well, I have to, and I'm working, but it's like, well, it's hard to kind of reach. It's hard to, I want to go back there to that level and to that height and to that kind of magic again, it was extremely special and unforgettable. And I think, I know anyone who watched that episode and that part of that episode in particular, you can't forget it. It's just unforgettable.
Yeah, absolutely. But the final episode, you also show up.
Well, there's that as well.
Within Elliot's mind. And that's kind of your final therapy session with Elliot, in a way. Once again, you are part of such a significant moment for the series, and you just lay out all of the different personalities within Elliot. And there's that great part where you look directly into the camera talking about the voyeurs. I love that. It feels like you played that scene a little bit differently than the Krista we see in reality. You're a lot more direct and so confident, So how did you go about approaching that final scene between them?
Right. Well, that happened to be my final day of filming. And we had the wrap party the night before, which was really not fair because I could not party the night before because this final scene was happening the next day. Man. But as always with everything, it comes down to the writing. The writing was so, and Chris is like, this is what we got to start at the beginning. This is the beginning. Started here, in society, and this is how, and then, I know about you too, and then right? It was just completely, and then of course how it was edited with all of the pieces from the whole series. And slipped in to the pockets of information. This kind of, and she's very. It's like I loved. Sam and I, we wanted to do it very just kind of, and certainly not matter of fact, but just very direct and very calm and very just laying it out. So now I get it. I know what's really going on. And then, well, we know what happens after the fact, right? The whole, I'll never forget. It's one line that Krista says in that scene, and I think about it a lot, pertaining to my own life. In places where I want to have control. I remember from day one, from the first season, remember the posters, control is illusion. Right? That one especially, I'm like, oh yeah, well, it sure doesn't feel like that way when I want to be in control. I'm like, no, I got this, I can control. Illusion, right? And one of the lines that Krista says in the last episode, series, is when everything starts to get in, Elliot starts to literally shake the world. She says to him, this isn't your control, it's your rage. And that makes me think about a whole myriad of things. Where's my rage pocketed? And when does that want to come out in the guise of being in control? Yeah. So, yes, pretty deep stuff, huh?
Yeah.
I need to do a comedy. Oh my God, I so need to do a comedy. Funny, but how's that going to happen now? Well, let's see what happens.
I mean, well, we can talk about another role that you famously had. Since we're an awards website, I wanted to touch on your awards history. You are a 2-time Emmy nominee for ER for playing Jeannie.
Yeah.
Do you have any?
Oh.
What's that?
Another comedic role.
Right. Oh, yeah. Do you have any favorite memories just of going to the Emmys and getting that kind of a recognition from your peers?
Yeah, I certainly do. You know, I've been thinking about that a lot, of course, because I mean, it's crazy to think that ER had its 25th year anniversary last year.
Wow.
I mean, that's not okay. That's not even possible because I look the same. And so clearly, 25 years, I'm just kidding. But no, I mean, of course, it's always, you know, it's always a beautiful thing to be acknowledged from your colleagues and you know, those who are in the same industry as you are completely. And I remember one Emmys, I actually, you know, I wrote a book that was published end of last year, in last summer, about my 2 brothers who've passed. And my brother Dennis, he went to the Emmys with me. And one of the photos that's in the book is from that Emmys ceremony. So I would have to say that that would be my most treasured and cherished memory, was when I went there with Dennis. You know, it's knock wood, whether, you know, who knows what the project would be, but I really sure would be a nice thing to get up on that stage and to say a big. So we'll see what happens. It's out of my hands, out of my control.
Right, there you go. Bringing it on back.
So I'll just do the work that I can and then let it go.
Yeah, well, who knows? You could be back to being nominated this very year, because again, it was amazing work that you did this final season of Mr. Robot. So Gloria, I really want to thank you so much for talking to us today. It was a true pleasure. So thank you.
My pleasure. Anytime.
Oh, yeah. And for those of you watching now, the voyeurs, hit like and subscribe for more interviews just like this, and head to goldderby.com to start making your Emmy predictions.